Okay, Karen's ready. Jason's ready. Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the Independence City Council meeting. It's Tuesday, February 14th, 2023. 2013 was such a nice year. So 2023 at 6:30 in the evening. Let the record show the council is here except for Councilor Job, who is excused. We have the minutes of the 24th of January in your packet. Do they meet with your approval?
Move to approve.
Second.
Have motion second. Core. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much. Under visitor comment, Jennifer Flores has some things she'd like to share with us. Please come to the microphone. And you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
I won't need that long.
Okay.
I know some people, maybe even some of you, think I'm a busybody, a loudmouth, a troublemaker. And while I may speak up about things that affect my life, I don't think that should be in the minority. That's part of why I joined Historic Preservation Committee, to preserve the historic town I moved to. Now, whether you believe it or not, I know that growth must occur for a town not to struggle and die, not to stagnate. No one wants independence going back to what it was in the 80s. But I can tell you, I'm not the only person, even if I'm the only one speaking loudly about it. Why do we even have an Historic Preservation Committee if we're not going to preserve what's there? We have this building that was approved to go, move further up the line. Proposed for 2nd and D Street, right next door to the Taylor House. There's no way that it complements it. It's going to be 40, 50 feet tall, which is ridiculous in that part of town. And you're going to put it right next to this house. It's going to require whoever buys it to purchase Dutch lap siding, which is not siding that's easily gotten now. And they're going to have to pay all this extra money to get it. Why? It's going to go up next to a modern building. We received no training in HPC, regardless of what you may have read. Councilor Roden used to work with me on HPC. She knows, she was there in 2019. We did not get training. The building proposed at 2nd and D may fit the current codes, but it in no way fits the historic charm and character of Independence. I won't even broach the continued and worsening lack of parking. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the you taking the time to come in. Let's see anybody else jumping up. So I'm going to continue moving forward. We have a appointments to Park and Recreation Board in your packet. And we also have, Karen, can you bring up, we have a 4th of July appointment that came in late and did not make your packet. But Michael Hicks is interested in joining the 4th of July committee. And I recommend both these, both Luce and Michael, to be appointed to their respective commissions.
I move to appoint Luz Prado to the Parks and Recreation Board and Michael Hicks to the Independence Days Commission.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Under my report, I have a couple of things just to fill you folks in. A number of us attended the LOC's City Hall Day at the Capitol. That was myself, Councilor Schwartzler, Councilor Roden, and City Manager West. Several hundred people from more than 80 cities attended the City Hall Day at the Capitol. We met with legislators, staff, state agencies. We heard from the governor and legislative leadership from both sides of the aisle. And we were all talking about the city's priority, our priorities, and also the priorities of cities around the state. I continue to work with the Mid-Willamette Valley Economic Development Partnership on the SEDS Advisory Group, which is focusing on what's needed regionally for economic development. This is a requirement for federal agency funding, so we have to have a region-wide plan. City manager and I met with Senator Merkley. We had a small group interpersonal meeting with him, and we talked infrastructure needs in our community. We recently had the folks from Business Oregon, the industrial land staff came here to the Independence, and staff and I were able to share what we have and what's needed to make Independence attractive for industrial and also meeting the needs in Oregon. Also had personal meetings with outside of the City Hall day with Senator Patterson and Representative Evans, following up on our city's needs and challenges. And also have had a chance to be meeting with legislative staff, both state legislative staff and also federal staff, talking about the importance of infrastructure. You hear me talk a lot about that, but that's a huge issue. And also how SDCs work and how important they are to our future. So it's been a busy couple of weeks. And I also want to thank counselors who everybody attended along with staff. The priority setting meeting was a week ago Monday. And I just want to say, as I said to the group at that point, I really appreciate it because I know some of you had to take vacation time, had to take time away from jobs, had to take time away from doing things with kids. And I really appreciate that. Which leads me into the proclamation that I'm going to make here. And I'm going to just read it because this is one of the things mayors get to do. So whereas Valentine's Day dates back as far as ancient Rome, and whereas the oldest known printed Valentine card was created in 1797, whereas the first heart-shaped boxes appeared in Valentine's Day in 1861, and whereas 6 million people get engaged on Valentine's Day every year, making it the second most popular day to become engaged, and whereas the long-standing holiday is one of the country's most popular holidays, and it is traditionally spent with family and loved ones. Whereas this year, the elected officials and staff of the City of Independence are giving up this traditional time with their family and loved ones to serve the Independence community. And whereas sacrifice of time, energy, and focus is also a gift from their families and loved ones to our city.
Thank you.
So that now, therefore, I, John McCardle, Mayor of the City of Independence, do hereby proclaim a hearty thank you to the elected officials and staff of the City of Independence for their dedication and taking time away from their families and loved ones to serve our community. And I further proclaim gratitude to their families and loved ones for their support and commitment each and every day to our city, done this day, the 14th of February, 2023. And so I just want to let you know that I get to proclaim things. And I just want to say, I really appreciate both your collective efforts, the professional staff that are here this evening, and also the recognition that there is a family commitment. Nobody does this on their own, that there are people that we care about that have to make sacrifices for us to keep moving our community forward. So I guess I did that. So anyway, thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
So-
Mayor.
So with that, as my comments, let me turn it over to our city manager for her city manager report.
Karen, do you have anybody joining us on Zoom tonight? All right, since we don't have anyone new joining us on Zoom or in person, I'm gonna, if with the mayor's approval, I'm gonna skip my normal, okay. I am gonna say, however, that tonight, after the city council meeting, we have a work session. It will be held downstairs in the event center. You're invited to attend. Tonight, we'll be talking about pavement condition index. So the city manager's report, a couple of things I thought might be interesting to the council and to our community. We have a new blog post on the Experience Indy Oregon website that details the 18 different businesses where shoppers can receive local scratches. You can find that blog if you put in experienceindy.oregon.com. Go downtown, buy something, get a scratch it, buy something more. Have a great time. We hope also, well, are you going to talk about your exhibit tonight as well, Natasha? Then I'm going to skip that. As part of our efforts to reduce our footprint, we'll be replacing the metal bulb halide bulbs along the north end of Highway 51 with LEDs to reduce energy use. We've already converted the fluorescent bulbs to LED at one of our water facility sites and will continue to update as we can to reduce our footprint. Our Public Works Department has been extraordinarily busy. They just provided me with a summary of their quarterly summary of their transportation. And I'm gonna really go over this quickly because there's a lot. They've done street signage maintenance. They spent many days hauling 75 truckloads of leaves out of the roadways. During leaf season, they sweep almost every week, and they have swept over 400 miles of streets during this time frame. And that's October through December. Our crews are updating the markings along some of our roadways, including the traffic change at 4th and C. We've responded to a storm that we had this year, including a tree that fell across 13th Street and another across Monmouth Street. Our crews were out as soon as they received the call, removed the trees, and cleaned up the area. During the ice storm, our crews worked to place de-icer and sand on major streets in the town to keep our community safe. The rainstorm after Christmas made it necessary to close Gun Club Road when Ash Creek was full and the road flooded. It was then reopened the next day. A couple of things coming up I thought you might be interested in and mark your calendars. The community awards are being held April 13th, so please hold that evening on your calendar. The State of the City event, where our mayor and Mayor Kuntz from Monmouth will be presenting their State of the City, is February 28th at 11 downstairs. Registration is at 10:30 a.m. Another thing on our Public Works, they have been out working on water service leaks, and they'll be putting together a larger project to replace our old galvanized copper and other service lines with PEX lines. We know these types of repairs are expensive, and we're working to get in front of them to reduce costs. So our crews have been out there. Finally, we were just notified that our finance director, Gloria, will be going to work for my dear friend, John Walsh in St. Helens in about a month. It's a little bigger city, and they're trying to replicate what we did down here. I should say what you did down here at Riverview Park. So she will be a great complement to that. And we wish Gloria all the best of luck. We will be moving forward with Chief as our budget officer. And I think we'll have something to say about it.
Right. We have to officially appoint a budget officer. And if there's no objection, can we just go ahead and by consensus appoint Chief Mason as our budget officer? Is there any objection to that? There is no objection. So Chief, have another hat.
He's good at filling shoes.
There you go. Thanks, Chief. We appreciate that. And congratulations, Gloria. I know the folks up there will really appreciate your efforts, and thank you for what you've done for our community. And you're helping make Oregon a better place all the way around. So thank you very much. Since we have a finance report in the packet, and it's an information only unless there's a burning question. Okay. And if you want to ask anything further, you can always ask Gloria afterwards. I'm going to keep us moving forward. We have the staff presentation, our monthly staff presentation from Natasha Adams, our museum director, ably assisted. Good evening and welcome to City Council.
Good evening, thank you. Okay, so although I'd rather embrace the holiday that is Oregon's birthday, I thought with my presentation today I would go wholeheartedly with the Valentine's Day theme. So this picture here, obviously I'm there, but I wanted to recognize Amy Christensen, who is our curator. She started as a volunteer in 2016 and really was without her, I'm not sure anything would have been moved from the old location to the new location. Thanks. And once everything was moved is when I joined the team, and she and I often comment that it's probably not fair how much we love our jobs and enjoy working together. So she's been doing really great. So as I'm sure you know, our mission is to collect and share the natural history and diverse cultural heritage of our community. As I go through this, you will see that one of the things we really need to work on is sharing our natural history, because it's something that we haven't quite figured out how to do yet. But before I give you all the awesome stuff about our museum, I just wanted to give you a few factoids, because as I was looking this up, I was really surprised at the amount of museums in the world and how many of them are in the United States, and also how many jobs museums support and create. This fact I thought was even more interesting, that it's actually 96% of the American public considers museums a more reliable source of historical information than books, teachers, or my favorite, even personal accounts by their relatives. So this evening, I'm going to touch on 4 topics. We're going to talk about our volunteers. We have 26 of them, if you include our boards, our visitors, the partnerships that we have maintained and created, and some of the upcoming events and exhibits that we have planned. All right, so like I mentioned, we have a very diverse array of volunteers and different things that they do. We have our advisory board, our Heritage Society board members, which function very much like the Friends of the Library organization functions. So the Heritage Society is its own nonprofit that is there to support the work that we do at the museum. We have volunteers who are there specifically to work on a project. So for instance, we recently had a very large donation of a collection of things from Valset's, and we have a volunteer who is there now cataloging that entire collection, and they came to the museum just to do that. We have other volunteers who spend time at our front desk and greet our visitors. Those often also are working on a project at the desk if there aren't folks coming in. We also have interns. Mostly those interns come from Western Oregon University. Many of them get credit for the work that they do at the museum. One group in particular was at the museum before Christmas. They worked for a whole term, and then they had to give a presentation to the entire history department about the work that they'd done at the museum. And I'll have to say, it was really enlightening, and it was really interesting to see how enriching they found the experience. You know, one of the gentlemen did a lot of scanning, and that's our PowerPoint that you see when you learn about the Oregon Cavalcade. And he was talking about now everyone that goes to the museum gets to see this thing that he made. And it was just a really good reminder that even small projects like that can have a big impact on a young person's life. And then we partner with the Easter Seals, and the Easter Seals are a nonprofit that with the program that we specifically work with, help seniors who are, or people who are 55 and older, who are looking for employment opportunities, or maybe it's harder for them to find employment because of some challenges that they might have. So instead of me telling you about what that experience is like, I'm going to hand it over here to Larry.
My name is Larry Tankerson. My title is volunteer, but what I do is digitize newspaper scanning. It's pretty simple. I've got a really high tech scanner, which is basically a digital camera. And from a distance of 12 to 18 inches, it takes a picture and such detail that it can be zoomed in and searched as a searchable PDF. And then I export those as a file, one file of all the pages. So each day is about an 8 and sometimes 10-page file. Well, I had been pursuing as an elderly worker, part-time work for years, and have been unsuccessful. I have applied everywhere and have not been able to find a suitable place that, with my disabilities and age and limitations, things I could do that were appreciated and willing to pay a few dollars an hour to do. I've had a real hard time. But it wasn't until Easter Seals came along that there was an opportunity for somebody that actually had government grant to support people like me. There are a lot of people like me who are senior or mid-level management, who are at the end of their second or third career, who would like to, can still do something, but not full-time, high-stress things that we did in the past. So this came along as an opportunity to volunteer under a government grant to do something that's truly meaningful, very flexible. So it's been a lifesaver. It's really been a very, very good opportunity to find that part-time job that I was looking for. I had no interest, I had no idea that this job existed, but now that I'm doing it, I am fascinated by it. It's giving me a chance to learn things about history that I never paid attention to in school or throughout life. In our life, as they happen to us, and we read about them or hear about them, they're big deal, but a generation later, nobody knows, except that we've seen. Well, there's a lot of big things that didn't make it to history that I'm learning about.
So that was Larry, and again, this is a reminder, right, that a museum isn't just there to hold old things and maybe people come and learn about them. We really are able to provide more services to the community than just housing old things. And Larry has been amazing. He's there 20 hours a week. He's one of 2 Easter Seal volunteers. For us, they are volunteers, but the Easter Seals program pays them to be there. And the work that he's doing is putting us probably 5 years ahead on our digitization. And the newspapers we've learned that he is digitizing have not been digitized anywhere else. So once he completes this project and we make it available to the public, folks will be able to search these newspapers that span, I think, 6 decades that have not been available digitally anywhere else. So it's exciting. So our visitors, as I'm sure you can imagine, we have them coming from everywhere. So we opened our doors in April of last year, and last year we had 2,721 visitors. And then in January alone, we had 426. To put that into perspective, September of last year was our largest visitor count, and that was the month of Hop and Heritage. So 200 of those were Hop and Heritage visitors. This 426 were some school groups, but mostly organic visitors coming in. And January tends to be cold and slow. So I'm really excited to see the trajectory of these numbers of folks coming in to visit the museum. While you check these comments out, because they're fun to share, and if you aren't on social media, then you don't see these as much. But while you look at these, I did want to invite you to a current exhibit that we currently have. It's in partnership with the Oregon Historical Society and Western Oregon University. It's an exhibit that talks about Black athletes really breaching the racial barriers in the universities of Oregon. The exhibit was relatively small from the Oregon Historical Society. So Amy reached out to Western and created 2 additional panels, and also was able to get some items on loan from their archives, just to kind of not only beef up the exhibit, but also make it more relevant to folks in our community. So that is there for all of February, and I hope you'll come check it out. All right, so partnerships. This is my favorite part, so I'll try to not talk too much. We have ongoing partnerships. The Legion Post 33 has partnered with the museum for a long time. They do the Veteran of the Month program. We now have 1 member of the Legion on the advisory board and 1 member of the Legion on the Heritage Society. So they are very much involved, and it's always great to have them. We just had a very fun partnership with the Community Services Consortium. We worked with them to have our inaugural youth art show, and they had their art on display in January. But we also, because of that partnership, have been able to create some, I'm not quite sure what the word is, some other opportunities, and I'll talk about those a little bit later when I tell you about our Osprey exhibit. The biggest partnership I wanted to share with you today is ongoing, but it is with the Dallas Community School. So the Dallas Community School is in Dallas. It's a charter school. It's K through 10. They just started having high schoolers. And so one of their high school teachers reached out to me and said, hey, we're doing this project this year, and we don't teach our kids history, we teach our kids how to learn history. And so there are 13 freshmen, and each freshman was given a decade, and they have to learn about that decade, and then they're given a 6x6 foot area, and they have to create an exhibit. Could you come in and tell them how to do that? So I'm like, sure. So it's been really fun. I went in and did about an hour lecture just talking about sort of Museum 101, how I was able to get into this career. And then last week they came to the museum and we spoke more specifically about design. How do we choose what the important things are that we want to share? How do we learn about that history is changing and what's important now may be different than what we learned about before? And, gave them some pointers, and then we set them loose in the museum and they had to find examples of the things we had talked about. And it was just been really fun. The students were incredibly respectful, and we had a lot of laughs, and they actually will have their exhibit on display in March in Dallas, and I'll go, but it'll be fun to see what they decide is important in their decades. One student has 2020 to 2030. So his, I think, is the most challenging. We talked a lot about the World's Fair, but it's been a lot of fun. All right, so upcoming, our archives, as you could see with Larry, the digitization is ongoing. Amy's done an amazing job organizing and cataloging. We have a volunteer who is a licensed contractor, so we were able to find some new shelving that he was able to install for us, where we only had to pay for the shelving. He didn't charge us for his time, which those are always great partnerships to have. Our biggest upcoming exhibit that we have is the Nesting with Osprey. It'll be on display March through April. We're working with a professor at Western, James Dawson, and he is an expert in birds of prey. And we had decided we were going to do this exhibit because we're all crossing our fingers that the osprey are coming back. And we knew we'd want to have a screen that showed the osprey nest. But I knew that he was an expert in this, so I called him and sort of said, hey, I'm not sure how you can help, but it'd be silly for me to not at least call you and tell you we're doing this. So he's been really great at checking the exhibit, making sure our facts are correct. And I very off the cuff said, do you have any ideas on how to get people through the door? Because if you have a bird, that's really easy. But, and he said, well, I have birds. He said, I don't have an osprey, but I have birds. So because we planned this specifically to happen also over spring break, we will have a bird of prey show at the museum where he'll bring some of his raptors with him, which is really exciting. The logistics have not been figured out, but it'll be great. And this is also where other partnerships come into play. So the osprey skull that you see on your screen is actually a 3D printed skull. The replica versions online for educational purposes are $140. And so I reached out to CSC, who had done our art show, because I knew they had a 3D printer, and we found a free 3D printing pattern, and they are printing these for us for $20. And I dropped one and it was fine. So they're pretty hardy. So that's really exciting because we'll be able to make enough that kids can really get interactive with them. And what makes this exhibit unusual is instead of normal museum panels, we're working with a local comic book artist, and the entire exhibit will be one big comic strip that conveys the facts and information about osprey, making it really family friendly and something that I think most folks haven't seen before. And we will also make it in a way that it will be travelable. So if other museums want to use it, we'll be able to do that. Now, let's see. Sort of upcoming and ongoing, our biggest thing is starting to reach out to schools. We're working on trying to figure out how to have some actual set curriculum. We want teachers to be able to go online and have sort of a menu of this is the age I teach, and these are the topics, and then for them to be able to select that. And then for them to get information prior to visiting, Then we have a program set for them while they're there, and then to also get information for once they get back to the classroom. So that's really the biggest shift that we're looking at right now of moving forward. And I think that's it. Unless you guys have any questions, we're online, so check out the website. Oh yeah, that was the other thing. The youth art show is our first online exhibit. So we have a new database that we've been using, which allows us to put things online. So they're all watermarked, but you can go online if you missed the art show and see all the art the students created.
Great. Well, thank you for your presentation. Any quick questions?
I just want to say, having worked in the old museum, Natasha, you and Amanda have done, you and Amy have done an amazing job. The outreach alone is just really amazing. One school group I would mention to you to not leave out are the homeschoolers.
Yeah.
I tried to do something with them quite a while ago, and while they have their own curriculum and sometimes they follow charter school curriculum or public school curriculum, they struggle with keeping the kids entertained too. So it's nice to get them out of the house and doing something different.
For sure. Yeah.
Great.
Good job.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, moving forward. Ms. West, I think you have an intergovernmental agreement with the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments.
That's a pretty good job.
Okay, so council, we're looking for authority to execute this IGA between the City of Independence and the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments. This IGA is going to help us to move forward with our community center and pool. As we know, our pool died and had to be closed because it died. Our community is very vested in that area and what we're going to do, but there are a number of different factions and what they want. Do they want a big pool? Do they want a little pool? Do they want an indoor pool? Do they want an outdoor pool? Do they want a community center? Do they want a large community center? What do they want? So we have been looking for a consultant to help us with that outreach, to talk to folks and to help us get their feedback. We're going to look at it in two ways. One is online and then one is in person. We were able, as members of COG, to take advantage of a grant that is out there to get their services on a discounted rate, which is fabulous because every dollar that we save is a dollar that we can put towards the construction and moving forward with the project itself. So this IGA it's an all-inclusive IGA, and it does cover a lot of things that we're not going to use, most of it relating to grants. There's one very small part that we are going to use, and that is project development to determining if the project is a community priority. And we are sliding under that in order to take advantage of that grant and get a reduced amount for online only. Now, we will be coming back to you on something else as soon as we find someone to help us with the in-person, the town halls and the stakeholder meetings. We may even be asking some of our counselors to go out and help us with that canvassing. Just a little heads up on that one. So that's what we're looking for. If this IGA meets with your approval, I would like to have the authority to sign it and then move forward with our online process to reach out to our community.
Questions for staff? If not, this is an action item, please.
I move that the council approve the IGA between COG and the city and authorize the city manager to sign the IGA on behalf of the city.
Second.
I have a motion, second. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Before we go downstairs for our work session, any council announcements at this point?
I would just like to put on record that the CDC reported today that 3 in 5 teenage girls are feeling hopeless and are in this decade are experiencing more sexual assaults than they have in previous times. And reading this report from the CDC today, really, I'm sure will light all of our fires to really try to bring these girls out into a place they feel safe and welcome in our community. And I think a community center could do that. And again, I think it really brings to me the need to get kids out of their homes, off social media, into places where they feel safe and connected and connect with other people. And it was just a really enlightening report from the Centers of Disease Control. And so if anybody wants to read it, it's of course online, but it breaks my heart to think that 3 out of 5 girls feel hopeless.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Additional message, additional. please.
One comment. I just wanted to report that I had a contact with a citizen this last week who was interested in discussing parking issues in the city of Independence. And I referred him to contacting the city to get that onto a future agenda. So I believe there has been some preliminary communication done.
Great. Okay. We're gonna take can we meet at 1:15 downstairs? Is that okay? That gives everybody a quick, and you need a cookie break. So we're gonna meet downstairs for a work session at 7:15. We're in recess.
I'll take another one. Or you can add.
If I have an extra one.
There was shade.
So this is just to keep us informed. We're not making any decisions. And as we, I like big cookies. Oh, God, it was stuck together. Oh, shucks. Well,
Might be a sign from the universe.
this is independence. If one is good, two is better. So with that, why don't I turn this over to you and then we can do that.
That's good, but
let me know when you're ready here. Good, okay. All right, so tonight we have Paul Wagowski from Capital Asset Pavement Services, who is going to do a presentation on the pavement management options report. Last time we did this was in 2015, so it's been a few years. It's a good idea to have these reviewed probably every 5 to 6 years and to do work in between. The asset management system that we get from this program, we actually have a software program that we will be able to track our streets now. Any work that we do, we can input that information and it will adjust the pavement condition index and tell us, okay, here's the things you need to work on next. This system will also integrate directly with our new asset management system. It's the Beehive system we use for water, sewer, and storm. It will integrate directly into it so that both can connect seamlessly. It's not a problem. This system allows us to manage our street system and understand different scenarios on how to best utilize the funds that we have. So we can run different scenarios and say, okay, if I do these streets, what's that going to do for me? If I change things around, what's that going to do? And it will run these reports and it will actually optimize what you want to do to the streets, but you can also tailor it to say, you know, I want to do some work in this area and work in that area and work in that area so I can get distributed around the city. And it'll just recalculate each time. We're looking at this along with all of the other systems in the city, and I'm working with this is just one of several things to figure out how we're going to best manage all of our systems with the funds we have available. So I'm looking at, for Beehive, I'm looking at water, sewer, stormwater. This program is Street Saver, specific for streets. We'll be able to monitor and track with Beehive street signs, striping, everything else, and have a database of all of the stuff that we have, when we should be maintaining it, when we should be fixing it, when we should be replacing it. So we're kind of gathering all of this stuff up so that we can make clear decisions later on. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Paul and let him do his thing. All right.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so we were hired by Merrill to do a pavement evaluation where we looked at every street maintained by the city and evaluated the condition of the pavement. And so it was a few-step process. We went out there and drove all of the road and chopped them up into segments based upon when the roads were built, when they were maintained. And then we went to a pavement inspection where we counted the different stresses out there, the severities of them, how much there was, and looked at them in the pavement management software. You can go to the next slide. And so that would give it each street segment a number between 0 and 100, PCI, pavement condition index. So what a pavement management system then is it's a computerized system to catalog and classify your streets, pavements, and to rate them with that pavement condition index. And as an analysis tool, then to take that information and forecast what the condition will be in the future without any funding. You give it certain levels of funding, it'll do a cost benefit analysis on what treatments would be most cost effective to do on each of the streets, and what the PCI of the network would be at various funding levels. And we use the Street Saver system. It's the most popular on the West Coast, one of the most popular in the world. Really, it's built for local agencies, cities, counties, whereas a lot of the other ones are built for more bigger ODOTs, DOTs, we use their system. So it's a lot easier for local agencies to use as well. Go to the next slide, please. So what we found when we did the evaluation, that you have nearly 30 miles of centerline miles of paved streets, about 2.5 miles of arterial, 5 miles of collectors, then 22 miles of residentials. The network overall average PCI is 68. And then if we break that into what percent your network is in each of the condition categories. So about 54% of your street network is in good condition, so 70 or above. Those streets then would have some minor cracking, maybe light weathering, a little bit of graveling possibly. Those are really good candidates for preventive maintenance. So your crack sealing, slurry sealing. Then about 12% of your street network is in fair condition, between 50 and 70. Some of those still might be okay for slurries if they're residential roads, streets. Our shields and collectors probably going to want to put a thin overlay on those, maintain them. And 13% of the street network is in poor condition. Those definitely need an overlay of some sort. And then in very poor condition, you have 8% of your street network. Those are beyond any kind of repair, except for they need to be able to rip up the entire road surface, requiring a reconstruction. That's where things get really expensive. Go to the next slide. So,
Can I
Oh, yeah.
ask a quick question? Out of those number of miles of streets, how, excuse me, how many of those are ODOT operated? This is just all City of Independence.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah. This is the whole report. Everything is only city.
Okay, thanks.
So pavement management philosophy is based upon the right treatment at the right time. And it's previous to using pavement management philosophies, cities would use a worst first maintenance strategy where basically they would just overlay look at the worst roads in the city, overlay those and not worry about any kind of preventive maintenance. Whereas you can get a lot more bang for the buck if you implement a good preventive maintenance system. So this here is a pavement deterioration curve. So a pavement will spend about 75% of its service life in good condition. That's 70 or above. So if you perform slurry seals, you can extend that out. So, it might last about 20 years, 15 to 20 years after you overlay it in good condition. Every slurry seal you do buys you another 7, 8, 9 years, depending on functional class. And you can do a slurry at about $4 a square yard, or about 40,000 per lane mile. Whereas if you let it drop below that 60 to 70 and get into the fair condition, now you're having to overlay it. It's costing you about 3 times the cost, or even more on some of those. And then you let it drop even further where it gets to very poor condition. Now you're talking $1 million a lane mile, 100 plus per square yard, or about 20 times what a slurry seal would cost you.
I'm sorry, I may have missed this, but I eat a lot of sugar now.
Oh,
Are we talking about all pavement or only pavement that the city's responsible for maintaining?
Yeah, so what we had them do is do a pavement condition index for all the city-owned, operated, and maintained streets. So there's no county streets in there, no ODOT streets. It's just the ones that we operate and maintain.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next slide. So we did analysis, 5 different scenarios at different dollar amounts to see what the overall effect of the street network PCI would be. So the first one we did was kind of a blank check, pie in the sky. If you had all the money in the world, what would it cost to bring all of your street network into good condition and maintain it there? So really that would cost $11 million over 5 years. And that would bring your network into a PCI of 84, so an increase of 16 points. And then after that point, you get them all in good condition. It actually costs a lot less the next 5 years after that to maintain them there. But again, this is more than they really usually can afford get to this function. So scenario 2, please. Next slide. So scenario 2 is your current funding level, about $100,000 a year. So we can see the line here is your current PCI of 68. That's going to likely drop to a 61, a drop of 7 points in 5 years at that funding level. And the bar graph shows the deferred maintenance. So that's the accumulation of backlog of treatments that you should have done that you did not. So basically the difference between the funding level here and the needs, roughly that. So that increases to over $10 million by 2027 at the current funding level. Next slide. So now here we have scenario 3. So this is what would require to increase the PCI just by 2 points to 70. PCI 70. So that would take $550,000 a year in order to accomplish this goal. Now the deferred maintenance still increases a bit, but just by 2 million over the 5 years, instead of 4 plus scenario 2. Next slide, please. And scenario 4 is what would it take to increase the PCI to PCI 75 in 5 years, and that would take about $1.1 million a year. And now we get to a point where our deferred maintenance is actually declining in a slight bit. So we're getting ahead of the curve here. Really, all we're getting at this point is those roads that we couldn't get to. So most of the street network would be in good condition at this point. And you're just having maybe about 10% of the street network that is already in poor condition, failed condition, that you weren't able to get to.
Carol, is scenario 2, is the message from scenario 2 that what we're doing now, we can cut that?
Yes. Yeah. We will have to do, if we want to maintain the investment in our system, we are going to want to do something in the future. And that was part of the comment that I made about we're looking at all of the systems holistically, because there's costs associated with all of them. So how do we best manage all the money that's there and make a really good recommendation to you about what to do next?
And then finally, we ran a scenario, what would it take to increase to 80 over the next 5 years? That would take approximately $1.7 million per year. And then we're looking at the deferred maintenance almost being eliminated, just about $2 million left by the end of 5 years. So next slide. So then we produced maps, you know, the next maps with the Street Saver system. So we linked all of the street segments that we found out there to a GIS map, and then this is actually produced within the program itself. So this is just, a map of your current PCI condition now. Everything in green is in that good condition, 70 or above. The yellow and blue would be the between 50 and 70 PCI. It color codes those differently. In the blue road streets have more environmental distresses, so weathering and cracking. And so they're still a good candidate for slurry seals, whereas the yellow streets have some kind of alligator cracking or depressions or rutting, which indicates that there might be some base failures. So there's going to have to be more work to that, either a thin overlay or some significant dig outs before a slurry would be placed on that. And then the orange roads, streets there, those are the poor condition. And then the red are the failed streets.
The gray ones are mostly new developments.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or ones that in the past have had an overlay, because there's some neighborhoods that were older and they did use some of the fund exchange money to go in and do an overlay. But no other improvements were done there. So like the underground wasn't touched or anything. They just, if the pavement was in bad shape, they went in and did a grind and overlay or a pull.
What's gonna happen to ICC Street here, and we are fixing the water on those?
The sewer line.
Yeah, the sewer line.
Yeah.
So how does that change the color?
So on C Street, when we go back in, because we have updated standards, when we go in and replace the sewer pipe and bring up the backfill back up, what we do is what's called a T-cut. And what that does is that goes beyond the trench zone. We cut that and then we do an inlay on that. And what it does is it creates a bridge. So as long as the pipe is installed properly and all the compaction is done properly, and then the pavement is done properly, it will bridge and not allow for any settlement. So it maintains that. And then over time, all you have to look at is going back periodically and resealing that joint versus having to do more intensive work.
Are there situations where we can sort of proactively take care of two things at one time? So like the sewer needs to be replaced and then the road needs.
Yeah,
Hopefully that's what this program will.
exactly. So I start having maps that have different colors on them, and I look for the ones that I need to replace. And I try to group them together, and then I use money from each one of the funds. So the big thing for me is if I'm gonna go into a neighborhood and disrupt their lives, I
Yeah.
really only wanna do it once.
Right.
I don't wanna do a sewer line 1 year and then come back a year later and, okay, time to do the water line, and okay, a year later, oh, we decided we're gonna do the storm line. And then when they are completely wore out from construction fatigue, guess what? We're gonna come in and do a grind and inlay on your street, then my head would be on a pike out front. So we try to group as many of those things together, so we limit the times that we disrupt their lives in that neighborhood. And business too, same thing, try to limit it.
And I'm looking at this map and picked out my street off of there. It's a red street. And honestly, it's not that bad cosmetically. So that gives me a little hope that if I'm at the bottom of the heap as far as perceived quality, I'm not falling into any holes and I'm not tripping on anything when I walk on the street.
My street's
Usually
green
go
and there's a house
down.
for sale right across the street from me.
Go down to where the red horseshoe is there off of C, that's Pioneer Park. You drive down that road, you might as well buy a new car. So.
And these give us a rating when we get ready to go out and do, it'll tell us you should do this. And we'll put a list of streets together. We go out and actually physically walk the ground and look at it and say, oh, you know, this says slurry seal, but actually I need to do some dig outs in some key spots. And so we put all of that together with the money that we have available and try and do as much, because I don't want to go out and do a slurry seal and then come back and do a pothole repair. I want to go out and do the pothole repair spot and then do a slurry seal over the top of it, so it creates a nice seal to go. So this gives us a starting point, but it's always boots on the ground when we go out and put a program together.
So the next slide, so these now are 5 more slides, one for each of the scenarios, kind of comparing what, you know, the different funding levels the street look like. So is that kind of scenario 1 where you're giving $11 million over the 5 years, and after that 5 years, you know, most of the streets are green and or, you know, in fair condition, which will probably be addressed in year 6 and 7. Scenario next slide, please. So this is scenario 2. Your current funding, so now we're getting even more red. So at this level, we're actually getting less green. So before we had 54% of the street network green, now we're down to 50% in very good condition. Whereas the percentage in failed is up to about 15% from the current intents. Next slide. And so scenario 3, so we're giving it 500,000 approximately per year. The area in green is going up to about 75%. So getting a significant increase in that. Unfortunately, we're still, area in red is still going up, the percentage of that as well, still about 14%. Next slide. This is giving it another 500,000 a year, about $1 million a year. The area in green is about to 80%. We're starting now to get less of that very poor, those failed streets, and people to address more of those. And you go to the next slide. This is that scenario 5 now, where we're giving it about $1.7 million a year. About 80 to 85% of the street network will be in very good condition, this funding level. And you're seeing there's a lot less, those red and orange streets.
What is the red right there? Farthest left, it's green. Yeah, what's that red right there?
That is where Talmadge and 16.
Oh,
16. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of bad.
There's one thing to note when I look at these and I look at the different scenarios and I'll lay them out and I look at the streets that no matter what funding level we do, they continue to be in red. I kind of compartmentalize those ones over, and those are really good candidates for reconstruction. So what other funding can I possibly look at, fund exchange or some other funding program where we can get grant money or something like that to do? Because no matter what I do with from a maintenance standpoint, I'm never really going to get up to where I need to be. So I kind of pull those ones out and then focus on trying to get as much coverage on the rest of the city as possible. And then when I look at those reconstruction ones, I can also look at, okay, this is one really good one for water and sewer, and maybe there's no stormwater there. Maybe we want to do stormwater design, provide stormwater to an area that's never had it before. And wrapping all of those different master plans in with this. So it's a lot of shuffling around, it's a lot of looking at the board, it's a lot of phasing and timing. But once we get a plan together, they all kind of seamlessly work together. Because if you think about it, I'm putting in a water line. And that pavement that was there, I'm replacing that pavement. Well, the water system pays for that. And over here, I replaced the sewer. And over here, I replaced the storm. Now I've got these other strips and the underlying base. So if I take care of the base and the underlying strips to do a reconstruction, my street cost has actually gone down because some of the other funds have already helped pay for the piece that they're impacting. And it's okay. That is allowed in those different categories of funding. But unless you're thinking about that and looking at that and trying to phase these things in together, you're never going to get the most bang out of it. April, cool.
So next slide. So now the next 5 slides are just showing for each of those scenarios, example plans. This is, kind of a recommended treatment plan based upon the PCI. Again, this is just a network level, and really you want to be, as Gerald was saying, that you want to put these in the ground, and when the time comes, make sure those treatments are actually what you're doing. That's scenario 1. This is scenario 2. Not nearly as many lines being treated. Lines up there. Next one. So as we go and give it more and more money, we're able to treat more and more things. So the pink here is your overlays, the green would be your slurry seals, and the blues would be your reconstructs.
Could you tell what exactly is an overlay? I think I know, but I want to know what is an overlay.
So overlay that is putting a layer between 1.5 inches to 3 inches generally across the entire surface. It's called. Last one, serial 5. So yeah, that's pretty much it. The next 2 slides are just out of the, if you want more information about each of the different scenarios.
So we have finalized the pavement report, and I'm going to be posting that on our public works website later this week. It's not this thick, it's actually a lot thicker. This is the thickness of just what he's covered. The rest of it is all tables, scenarios, the numbers that we've agreed to put in for actual costs based on what we think it is right now. So everything's been kind of brought up to today's cost for doing stuff, even though things bounce around right now. It's our best dusty crystal ball of what the costs are, which is where all of the stuff came from. So if you really want to dig into the data, that's the other section that is attached to the end of it. But I wouldn't worry about it. Let me do that for you.
You and I were visiting earlier and you were saying that we're not unique. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, so every agency that I've worked for is just like this. They have a large need and they have not as much funding for it. And there's a long history and reason for that. Gas tax has not kept pace with the inflation costs. We get most of our funding from gas tax revenues. So if it's not keeping up with inflation and more people are driving more fuel efficient cars, we're not driving the 1970 Buick anymore. And also people are converting over to electric, so they're not buying gas anymore. Those revenues either stall, stagnate, or they drop. And that is our primary funding source in the state for taking care of the streets. And it's not just pavement, it's striping, signage, personnel, pothole repairs, sanding, all of the stuff we do during the winter time. so that you can still drive around when it's icy. That's all paid for through the street fund. So it's not 100% of that money doesn't just go to pavement maintenance. There's a lot of things that go with the system. Sidewalks, updating ADA ramps, street system. That's what all of that funding that takes care of. So our funding has dropped, our costs and our needs have continued to go up. And we're looking at how do we address that gap. When I was in Wilsonville, when I started in public sector, they put me in charge of the pavement management system there. And at that time, that was 2001, they had an annual budget of $500,000. And they had set up a street maintenance fee program that everybody paid into. And they knew that if they didn't take care of the streets, because they have a lot of truck traffic there, that in Wilsonville, that the streets would get destroyed quickly. So they kind of got out in front of it and they started doing their street payments. When I went to Silverton, we went through the same thing. I think you guys did it. And it was the same issue. They ended up going through and passing a street maintenance fee and started doing work on their streets, but they had much older streets because Wilsonville was 1970-ish when they started. Silverton, much older. So they had way more wear and tear on their streets. So they're doing a lot of catch up. Did the same thing with this in the city of Molalla. They actually passed a street maintenance fee. Citizens Initiative came forward and they overturned the city council and said, no, we don't want to pay for it. They were, I think, in worse condition than we are here, and they're continuing to go down. They were going to drop down to 59 or 60 in 5 years. So they were on the trajectory down. But it's a council and community decision on what you want to do. All of this stuff costs money, and I don't have a bunch of outside sources to allow me to do that work.
Dallas tried to pass a street one a couple of years ago, a few years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And it went over like a lead balloon.
But every city is dealing with this. That's the most important part of this is it's not just Independence. Salem deals with it, Portland deals with it, McMinnville deals with it.
It's nationwide.
Yeah, you pick any city around and they have the same issue. Different states have different funding mechanisms. We're focused on Oregon and what is Oregon and Oregon cities doing.
We get a lot of complaints from residents about the streets.
I get a few. I don't get a large number. I think I've had, since I've been here, I've had probably about 4 complaints.
Yeah, but you used to have that dip. The C Street by you, that's dangerous, yeah.
Well, I will tell you that, and I'm stepping on your presentation, that Gerald was very helpful, was a key part of when we got ODOT to come and visit. Gerald got in the vehicle because he and his staff had gone through, they looked each on Highway 51. And so they knew exactly, so they could take the ODOT books to directly to, here's the.
Drive over every pothole.
Yeah, it was amazing how.
We made sure and stopped and showed them quite a
Do it in
few.
a truck, do it in a small car.
Yes. We took him in the van. So, but it really made a difference. And, and the fact he can talk ODOT, he can talk transportation and pavement and alligatorisms and all sorts of things like, am I using the right words? Yeah, that's good. It was really helpful. So I just want to publicly recognize you for helping make that happen. And then, we got them to do a whole boatload of work on Monmouth Street. So we don't have as many. Darn it. And we'll come back and revisit this again, but I wanted you to at least have a comprehensive look at it so that you are thinking about this, because we talked about sewer. We're getting ready to do the water master plan, storms coming after that. We've got the street. Just kind of looking at it all together, and it seems daunting and we'll never ever get there, but it's an elephant and you got to take little bites at the elephant. to get the problem solved. So don't despair. There's ways to make improvements. And you don't have to do the money's not an issue, we'll just fund the whole thing. You can take little bites at it. There's a whole bunch of different ways that we can fund this. Some places do bonds, some places do gas tax, some places do street maintenance fees, some places do multiples of that. We'll look at all of that stuff later on, and then you can pick which one you want to do.
Is this helpful, folks? I really want to thank both of you for taking the time to do this, and I think we can go home if nobody has any screaming objections. Yay, and so balance out your sugar, go home and eat a veggie. And thank you very much for bringing.
Unless anybody wants another.
No, and I
Probably taking them home.
no, she's got,
A lot.
oh, but yeah, just put them, oh, we can't get them the rest of the canyon.
No, I know, I.
No,